We made this.
Hello and welcome to CHUCKYVISION, the podcast about child's play, Chucky and horror films here on the We Made This podcast network. My name is Mark Adams and I am your host for this month's episode, one of our specials in between seasons 2 and 3 of Chucky. And alongside me is my co-host Dev. Hello, Dev.
Hi, everyone. Hello.
And we are not looking at horror this month. We're looking at my choice of Heartstopper, which was a gay romance series launched last year on Netflix. And we felt that it still fit with the Chucky brand because the whole teen romance thing is quite an integral part of the Chucky TV series and was something that we both really, really loved as part of that series. And just for the simple reason I fucking adore this program, I wanted to have it as part of CHUCKYVISION. And there were 8 episodes launched in one go on Netflix at the start of last year, 2022. And we are anticipating a new season within the next few months back on Netflix because it did get renewed almost immediately after being launched for another 2 series. And Dev, I know the answer to this. What's your opinion of Heartstopper?
It's not necessarily a bad or a good. It's not for me.
I'm stunned by this because this television program just warmed my heart to the point of I've watched it 3 times through now, plus I've watched it again for the show, and it just continues to just make me happy. And I'm really interested to unpick why you didn't love it in the same way as me. And I think it may just boil down to the fact that we are queer people of a different age. I think we're going to look at it episode by episode. I've got some comparisons that I'd like to do with the graphic novels as well, written by Alice Oseman. And I guess we'll start on episode 1. Episode 1 is called Meet, and the blurb on Netflix is: stuck in a secret relationship, shy Charlie starts to crush on Nick, the school's popular rugby star, and joins the team against his friend's advice. And I just think it's a wonderful start. The vibe just is immediately established with how this is quite gentle, but does have some threat in it as well. And the high and high thing is just beautiful. I think the acting of these 2 guys is just wonderful. What did you think of the acting? Were you not as convinced as me?
I want to make it clear up top that I only have a few quibbles with this show in terms of stuff that I don't like. It's not for me, but yeah, the acting is good. As you say, the tone is gentle. It's consistent, and it is all there. They are good, like the actors and the writing and all that. It is solid. I definitely understand. This isn't like, oh, I don't understand why people watch this. Like, I get that this is good stuff for an audience.
Right. So why isn't it for you?
Well, let's okay. So this isn't specific to episode 1, but this is the whole thing, I guess. For me, it's about the stakes. If these 2 don't get together, what happens?
Go on.
Well, nothing. They just don't get together. That's it.
Well, heartbreak is what happens, at least for
They're like
Charlie.
12. They'll move on.
They're 14, but okay.
I mean, that's the thing. They're kids, you know. It's like maybe I can't relate or anything. I guess maybe that's it, that I can't relate. But like, you know, I understand that coming out gay at an age like this, it's a big deal, and I definitely understand a lot of the drama in this show. But like at the same time, you know, if they're gay now, these two aren't going to be together when they get to college. They're going to meet so many more gay people.
You're awful. So for me, I think what I like about it is it's because what I dreamt of as a kid, and I was being so kind of aspirational, even though obviously I can't do that because I'm 44, not 14. But as a 14-year-old boy, I had these feelings for other boys and hid them, and I wasn't brave enough. And I didn't have anything like this to watch as a kid. So I don't know. I think there's definitely some kind of just desire to have had not only this program, but this situation as a kid. And that's probably why I love it so much.
It is significant for that. It is. It you know, definitely helps people of this age. And I totally understand why it connects to people young. It is a YA novel. It connects to young audiences. I definitely get that. That's what I mean. It's me, you know, it's me as the audience. Like, if this was a boy and a girl romance, my reaction would be exactly the same. Like, who cares?
Right. So you don't really kind of grasp onto it because of its queerness, which I think is definitely something I've done. I think if this was a boy and a girl, I wouldn't be interested whatsoever. But the fact this exists, the fact that this is so beautiful and so lovely about a queer relationship just warms my heart. I found myself just smiling the whole way through it. It lifted my mood, and it's even better on a rewatch. And I don't know, maybe it is an age thing that I was just crying out for something like this to have existed for the last 40 years. And I got it late. And I think there's some kind of pride there that young people have got this and I didn't, and I'm glad, maybe.
Yeah, like I say, I think my not even criticisms, my point of view. It's very much my point of view. I'm not saying this is bad for audiences, because it definitely has its audience.
And I think, so let's go through some of the stuff in episode 1 anyway. The animated stuff around the live action stuff I thought was really, really well done. And that was quite nicely referential to the books. And the likenesses of the characters was really good too. I thought the books were quite lovingly recreated in a lot of ways in that. And I don't think you've read the books, have you?
No.
They are fucking great. But of course I would say that because I've gone hook, line and sinker into this. And the depiction of Ben is beautifully complex. You know, he is awful. He is vile. He is mean. He is selfish. But we've all made shitty decisions when we were in the closet. And I think in a lot of ways, like Queer as Folk, every gay man thought that they were Vince. But a lot of us are kind of an amalgam of Vince and Stuart because, you know, sometimes you are more complex than the two binaries of good guy and bad guy. And so we've all made poor choices because of being closeted. And I like the ambiguity that Ben is a mess. He's awful, but he's a mess. And I think they get that across quite well.
Yeah, characters like Ben are interesting. You definitely do get that clear aspect of exactly what you were just talking about, of him being a mess. At the end of season 1, I'm only slightly, but I'm a tiny bit tempted to read the books, because watching this, there were times where I was like, I want to know a bit more about this character, what's going on in their head, because, like, you know, like Ben, like, I get what they're going for, but, like, there are long stretches of this season where Ben is a non-factor, and then suddenly he comes back.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that is fair. I think it's quite similar in the books as well. It's quite faithful to the plot of the books. They do cut a character out completely. And I don't think it suffers for that, but I think a lot of the fans of that character from the books were disappointed. And yeah, like I say, I think it gets the vibe of the books really, really well and depicts it for the screen really nicely. Another thing I really liked about this first episode was just how casual Elle's friends were about her transition and its an irrelevancy to them, other than she ended up going to a girls' school. I'm like that now with my friends, but it took me a while to get there. I didn't have many trans friends, and when I first started having people who were trans or non-binary, I just purely by habit get their pronouns wrong, etc., etc. And I learned on the job, I suppose is the way I'd put it. But I love the depiction of these young people. It's their norm, it's their casualness, it's their normal way of life, is that these things are a thing that happens rather than something spectacular or different or something that the society hasn't really seen. And I'm old. I'd like to think that this is how all young people are these days.
I honestly don't know how kids are these days. You know, like, I don't know if kids back in my day and probably your day, you know, everyone said gay. Just like everything was gay back then. And I don't know if kids still say that. I don't know what kids are saying these days. I don't know how kids are reacting. We see in this show that kids are still kind of homophobic. But yeah, with Elle, I do like Elle. I like the character of Elle. I like the actress. I thought she was very natural. She is trans. I saw on Wikipedia.
She is, yeah.
Again, though, similar to Ben, and don't get me wrong, I really agree with the casualness of it. I think it's important to have trans actors play characters where it's not about them being trans. Like, you know, I like a trans comedian, Patty Harrison. She's hilarious. And she's hilarious for nothing to do with her being trans. And I like when she gets to do comedy stuff where it's not about that. You know, she's just funny. And so this is a very similar case. At the same time, though, this is very much one of those shows where it's, like, God, these are going to be old references like Degrassi or Biker Grove or something like that. It's a soapbox show, isn't it? It's about issues, youth issues. And I found it very odd the whole way through these 8 episodes. I kept watching it thinking like, okay, so where's the subplot about her being trans? Okay, when are they going to mention it? And it's odd because I read that they cast her, Yasmin Finney, because she was very vocally out about being trans and giving trans issues for children online and stuff. And it's very odd that they cast her for that. And then if they didn't mention at the start of the first episode that she used to go to the boys' school, I don't think you would have even known she was trans.
And isn't that the point, though? That she's a girl now and she should be treated the way she's been treated by her friends. And I think it's a very important message, actually.
That is important, but I feel like I'm just questioning the point of her in this show because, like, she doesn't really aside from her liking Tao near the end, like, she's just there. Really, I don't know. You know, it's a show about 2 young gay people coming out and exploring their identity. You know, it's a show about identity, and I just feel like, why are we not exploring Elle's identity in any way?
I understand what you're getting at, but I actually really like the fact that they don't, and it's just established that she is a girl and that Tao has feelings for her, regardless of whether she's transitioned or not. I think it's really lovely, and I like that that isn't what's complex about their relationship. I like that it's actually just Tao's difficult personality that's complex about that. And I think there may be, in the future series, some more stuff on Elle's transition, but there wasn't really in the books either, so perhaps not.
I know I'm taking both sides of it, but it's just, yeah, I feel like if you're going to go all the way with it, then it's like, okay, so the actress is trans, you know, the character is trans, like, I don't think you can really say, like, oh, Heartstopper, it's a very pro-trans story, it's, you know, like, we love trans people. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know if they get their card for, like, celebrating transness if it's not addressed in any way. It's just, Elle is just a girl. That's just her character.
I'd argue that if I was trans, maybe I'd like to see something that just happens to have a trans character that isn't about the transness as the only character trait. It's about a trans person falling in love, sure. And wouldn't it be nice if there were no complications when it comes to being trans? And there isn't for Elle, which is kind of nice. I don't know. I'm not really sure what I'm getting at, but I think sometimes just seeing a character that has the same minority as yourself, but the main focus of that character isn't the minority, is actually a really positive thing, and something that I always like with gay characters. So obviously when we're talking about Charlie, he is obsessed with his gayness because of the whole, is he closet, is he gay, is he this, is he that, is quintessential part of his story. But I wonder whether it was deliberate, that the transness just happens to be a very minor part of what happens with Elle and her story. Her story is more about loneliness and not fitting in and being the new kid and stuff like that, I think. So that's caused by her being trans, but it doesn't make her story about being trans, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I get what you mean totally. And I do agree with it. But I just feel like, I don't know, it's like if you tagged this book, it feels like, they wrote the book about, like, this is a book about two queer kids, and it's about queerness, and it's about the LGBT issues. And it's like, you tag trans issues on that as well. And it's like, I don't know if you can really mention it. Like, it's not a thing in this show so far.
So the rugby match montage I thought was really, really well done. I thought that was, as montages go, it worked really well. The music choice was great. The fact that they showed his progression was really lovely. And the other thing I noted was it's really interesting how Nick is just genuinely lovely, regardless of the stereotypes of the people around him in the rugby team. It is a massive stereotype that rugby lads are lol, 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 boys, 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 lads, 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 etc. I think it's lovely that regardless of his sexuality, that he's a decent human being, and that's what Charlie falls for more than the fact that he is a cute guy.
Yeah, Nick is a nice boy. I will say, though, with Nick, and this is, again, the whole season, not just episode 1, I guess because they are kids, but like, if they didn't do that whole animated, birds or whatever on screen, and like the pink vignette when Charlie first sees Nick, I wouldn't like that. That seems like a very on the nose way of going, oh, they're in love, because otherwise Nick is just a boy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he would have just sat next to a boy, but they had to make it pretty clear. But that's fine, because, it's from Charlie's perspective. The other one, and, maybe I'll get flack for this, but I don't believe any of the characters when they said Nick Nelson was the straightest boy in school. He's not. If I went to that school, I would be calling Nick Nelson gay.
I mean, he's more sensitive than you could get the moniker for the straightest boy in school. You're absolutely right. But I think it's more about who he hangs out with and how that bleeds into how people see him and people's perception of him.
But he stands out compared to his mates. He's so delicate, and the way he flicks his hair, he's always flicking his hair constantly. I don't know why those people aren't constantly calling him gay.
Straight boys can be vain too. I'm not sure flicking your hair means that you're gay.
At that age, though, they would have said he's gay.
Oh, yes, he would have been accused of it, yes. But I guess you're right. I think you highlighted this on Twitter about how they communicate via Instagram Messenger. You seem to be obsessed with this. Why?
I said that to another friend. Who's my age. He's 29. And I said, all the kids on this show talk on Instagram. And he was like, what the fuck? It's so weird. And they do it the entire show. Are they sponsored by Instagram?
I don't know. I mean, I'm old, so I use Facebook Messenger to talk to my friends. And, Instagram's for young people, right? I only have an Instagram because I absolutely have to. And I hate it. I've never used the chat facility on it. But I think what's more important than the platform they use is the depiction of anxiety when you can see the 3 little ellipses moving about when people are talking. We've all been there. We've all sat there watching someone type when we're anxious about a message we've just sent. So I get that Instagram may be a sponsorship choice. I think you're probably right. It's not explicit in the books that it's Instagram. But what's more important is, you sit there and you agonize over a text and you take forever to write a text, then you delete it. But on the opposite side of that, someone will have seen your writing and they're anticipating the response. And God, that anxiety just was like a punch in the gut to me. I still do that if I've met a boy. I still do that with friends if I've sent a message that I'm not sure they'll like. The depiction of anxiety is fucking perfect, regardless of whether it's on WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, whatever. I think that's incredibly well done.
No, it is well done. Yeah, they do use it a lot, and it is to a good effect. I didn't realize how much they were going to use it at first. Like this is like watching like an anime or something. But you can't tab over to another site when watching this show because they text so much. There are entire scenes in text. You need to read it all.
And I think that's really good. Actually, it is a visual medium, and the other thing it reminded me of was, I think the first time I saw this done was in Sherlock with text messages with text on the screen. It reminded me of that a little bit, but obviously different because it's kids talking about whether they like each other. But, it did for some reason remind me of Sherlock. It's not an original thing to do that anymore, but I thought it was done very, very well.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I know House of Cards did that as well quite a bit. It was it's not a fad of it still going, but yeah, that was a thing that every TV show realized they could do. And it's done to a good effect with the youth of them, the age of them.
Yeah, true. All right, episode 2 is called Crush. Elle struggles to settle into her new school as Charlie and Tao are convinced Nick is straight. Nick starts to question his unfamiliar feelings. And I really love the way crushes are depicted here. It's so real. And again, I'm going to repeat how old I am, but I met a bloke recently that I immediately developed a crush on, and I'm fucking obsessed with him. I'm like, don't send him a message every day. Let's try and just wait until we go on our next date, blah, blah, blah. And it's fucking hard. And it is hard from the moment you start doing it until the moment you don't have to do it anymore. And I just love the way it shows you the ridiculousness of people's crushes, the ridiculousness of how you just hardly know this person really, but you obsess and it distracts you. And it just felt really real to me how Charlie is just, well, frankly, a bit shit. Do you agree, or am I just a man-child?
No, I get. Yeah, no, I get it. And this is a important part of the show of them realizing things with each other, and both of them realizing things, different things. Yeah, it's an important part of the show. Straight up, at the start.
The angst for replies to texts is real. The checking whether or not you've got 2 ticks. Fuck! I've been doing it this week with this boy, and I don't even know if this guy, will be a thing. But I just can't get it out of my head. And so watching this whilst currently feeling in a similar way to how Charlie is in this episode, it's just fucking, just like I said, like a punch in the gut. It's brilliant. I think it's so well done. And it doesn't pull its punches and make anyone attempt to make them cool. It's like, yeah, we're all shit. We all behave like this. We're all just rubbish when it comes to being in relationships. They even acknowledge it with, why am I like this? Why are we like this? That's a classic line that goes across all the books as well. And it's just brilliant. And on the flip side, everyone has had a Ben who's used them, and it's hard to see that character knowing that you've done it yourself, but also being able to go through your head with a list of names of people who've done it to you as well. I really just like how it's so perceptive when it comes to matters of the heart. Either I'm a massive man-child, or the fact that as a 44-year-old man, I can watch this and empathise with these teenage boys falling in love. I think that's just a testament to how well written this is and how well adapted from the books it is. Or is it just that I'm a bit more horny than you and you don't know?
You said at the start it's an age thing. You said your age. Yeah, I'm younger than you, but I guess more of an experience thing, yeah. I just don't relate as much to these anxieties and these stories.
Fair. I want to talk about Tori, who is a minor character across this series, but the Heartstopper books were a spin-off from a book about Tori.
Oh, okay. See, because I wondered, I was like, Tori was... she's like, I don't know, like the Sixth Sense or something. I was wondering if she was real or not. She only shows up now and again.
Yeah. So it was called Solitaire, and it came out before the Heartstopper graphic novels. It was a novel. And the Heartstopper stuff is set prior to Solitaire. And so I'll be interested to see what they do with Solitaire going forward in the Heartstopper TV series, whether or not they make Tori a major character or they just cut the Solitaire stuff out completely. In Solitaire, Charlie and Nick are a happy established couple a couple of years after the events of the first series of Heartstopper and the first Heartstopper book. And I would really like to see more Tori, because I enjoyed Solitaire as well. And it really is interesting having seen the kind of Heartstopper world, Heartstopper universe, Heartstopper multiverse, whatever, how little a part Tori has during this series.
Yeah, that was surprising to learn she had her own story, because she's an oddly mysterious character. Maybe it's just her performance.
No, I think she's supposed to be mysterious. The character is quite complex in Solitaire, so I like that she's come across like that to someone who didn't know.
I mean, I was also confused as well, because when she first showed up, and then I saw her later in school in a uniform, I was like, hold on, like, she's older, but like, I thought much older, because I even looked it up. I was like, why is my radar going off here? I looked it up, she's almost 30.
Okay.
I was like, she does not feel like she should be going to this school.
Yeah, I think maybe Tori's casting is a little old, but I think the other characters do look like teenagers. I know they're all like 19, 20.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah. But yeah, everyone else is decent, yeah.
And the other character that pops up in episode 2 is Nellie, the dog. And Nellie is a massive part of the books. And it was just such a lovely, lovely girl. And I like dogs, Dev. And this whole thing is so fucking heartwarming and heart-stopping. See what I did there? And it's just, there's a dog and there's two boys in love. And of course I fucking love this shit. And so looking at the drummer scene as well, it's so sweet and so sensitive and so just romantic, and being queer is hard, and you don't get those romantic things as easily as you might if you were straight, or at least in my experience as an older queer person. And to see then they hugged and I cried. I have counted how many times I cried during this series, and it is quite embarrassingly high. Every time, basically every kiss, I was like, oh, little tear. And oh god, just so fucking emotional, the whole thing for me. I feel like it's almost naughty of me to have grasped onto this so hard when it's not for me. It isn't. It's for queer teens. But as a queer teen, I had nothing like this. And this almost feels like redemption for me, or a thing to be happy about that queer teens have it now. And that generally made me emotional throughout the whole experience of reading and watching Heartstopper. Episode 3 is called Kiss. Sparks fly at a birthday party where Nick's friend Tara confides in him. Inspired, Nick shares his feelings with Charlie, and they grow even closer. And that Google search that Nick does at the start. Hard relate. Every queer person has done that stupid online fucking test. Am I gay? The fact if you're typing that into Google, you fucking bendy in some way, mate. But we've all done it.
That's maybe why I didn't relate to this. I never had any hard questions like that.
Really?
No, I remember. I was... Well, I wasn't, but you know what I mean? Like, well, I guess I was if I thought I was, but like I was straight in most of school. And then I didn't have any gay feelings during then. And then in uni, I think it was just like, I vaguely remember it was a conversation about celebrities or something. Like, don't you think this person's attractive? Is this person attractive? And I was like, oh yeah, I really like this guy. I can't remember who it was. Matt Mickelson or someone, because I think Hannibal was on. But it's like, oh yeah, he's really hot. And then it's like, what about this actor? What about this actor? And they were like, oh, you do like a lot of guys. I was like, all right, I guess I do.
Fascinating. I just bottled feelings for years, right into my mid-20s. So maybe there is something real there that I've kind of just grasped this because it is so lovely and beautiful and heartwarming and the antithesis of what my life was as a teenager. Maybe that's what it is. And there were so many hard relates that maybe that's it. Maybe that's why I love it. And you're just kind of like, this is all right. It's well done, but it's not for me. Even stuff like Tao's jealousy, it's nothing to do with sexuality. It's a real thing where you see yourself losing a friend because they're attracted to someone else. Again, hard relate. I get so fucking jealous of friends getting partners. And I should be happy. And of course I am happy for them. But there's that underlying, what if he's going to break his heart? What if this, what that? You feel protective, but it comes out as jealousy. And Tao is a shitbag. But at least I have always had similar feelings to Tao. I've behaved differently to how he does during this series. But again, all the characters and all their flaws, I feel like they're really, really well done and really well fleshed out and explained. And you can empathize with even the worst characters here.
Yeah, Tao, I'm glad you said it, yeah, because, I mean, I don't think he's completely it, but yeah, Tao is kind of a dick at times in this, but it's understandably so. I've been in that situation, you know, with friends having girlfriends and stuff like that, and it changes friendship groups, doesn't it? Where suddenly you aren't hanging out with someone every single day because they're hanging out with someone else.
It's human to feel like that, and the way you handle it is what makes you a good person or a bad person, you know?
Yeah, it's very easy at that age, especially at that age, to have a little bit of resentment towards that person.
Yeah, I want to look at Harry as well, because he really is vile. But again, you can empathize. He is so insecure, so desperate to be cool. And he uses what he has physically to try and make himself desirable as a friend, as a partner, when really it's utterly irrelevant that you're rich. It's utterly irrelevant that you're attractive. It's getting it so wrong. And I actually feel very sorry for Harry. In a similar way, I feel sorry for Ben. And I like how this series doesn't completely and utterly demonize or make characters a monster. You can truly understand what their motivations are and the mistakes they're making, because they're all such human things.
Yeah. Well, it's like how I just said Tao was a dick. You know, the thing that really made me think he was a dick, but then at the same time, it's totally understandable at that age, because you're not really considering the whole board. Do you know what I mean? Like the chessboard. You're not considering everything. But it's the moment when he's moved past, oh, is he straight or is he gay or not? And then it's more like, it was something to do with Harry and the lot. It was like, oh, Nick is going to be like Ben, you know, he's not going to come out or something, or he's not going to defend him or whatever. And it's like, it's when Tao starts acting really dickish towards Nick. And it's like, why are you acting like such a dick? But then, like, the obvious answer is, like, Nick's situation is different. Like, he can't just come out as gay, because then his friend group, like his rugby group, his world will change completely. And so it's understandable why he won't come out. But then, like, Tao was, like, mad at him for that.
Yeah.
But it's understandable because Tao, you know, everyone at this age is kind of they've got horse blinkers on in a sense, don't they?
Yeah, and again, I think that's really well done. You can understand why Tao is angry, but you can also understand why Nick is scared. And this whole show is about empathy and understanding how life is actually really tough immediately from being a teenager. And I think, school is very, very complex with your crushes and your love triangles, but I don't think it stops when you become an adult. I've been in some truly fucking mind-blowingly difficult situations romantically as an adult. And I think this program really kind of, whilst it's quite wistful and positive and a really lovely depiction of queer romance, in a weird way, it doesn't pull its punches, even though it still feels quite wistful.
Yeah, I remembered what it was. It was the moment when Imogen asks Nick out in front of everyone, and he says yes.
Yeah.
And it's like maybe to our perspective, an adult perspective, it's so obvious. He only said that because he was pressured to in front of everyone. But then Tao is like, oh, obviously that means he's straight. He loves Imogen, and it's like, clearly not that. So don't be a dick to Nick for that. But it didn't feel pointless drama. It totally made sense for kids at that age to act like that.
I mean, that's at the end of episode 4, and I think that's probably the best cliffhanger of the series. But I definitely haven't finished talking about... I mean, we haven't talked about Kiss in an episode called Kiss. If we're doing the Mark cry tally, the first kiss, I cried. So that's 2. And then when Nick appeared at the door, I cried again. So that's 3. But the hands thing, at least for me, there's something so intimate about holding hands with someone. For me, I think holding hands is more intimate than fucking in a lot of ways. And just holding hands and it's just so lovely. Every time my heart missed a beat. The title of this show is fucking brilliant because my heart was all over the place through the 4 hours of joy I had watching this. And you don't empathise with that at all, do you? How many times did you cry, Dev?
Well, we're doing a tally, so far, none. But let's see how it goes.
Okay, episode 4 is called Secret. Charlie and Nick agree to keep their relationship a secret at school while Nick figures things out. Nick's friend Imogen asks him out on a date. And I think Charlie's horror at the start and misunderstandings where you just go from 1 to 100 when it really is still just a 1. Again, something that we've all done that means so much to you. You just overanalyze, and I think this isn't just about queerness. I think this is about anxiety as a human with a lot of emotions too. And Charlie's clearly a very unemotional person, and again, I can identify with that. And then, of course, there is the kiss again. I didn't cry at this one, but I was just like, yay, they kissed again. And yeah. And then there's an exploration of Nick's confusion, which I came out as bi initially because I didn't want to admit the full gayness, which I think is a practice, a behaviour that is fading away. But a lot of people my age almost used bisexual as a transition to kind of ease yourself into being gay. And what I like about this is there's none of that here. It is a genuine confusion over how can I like boys and girls. And I think it's really sensitively done. It's very sad, actually, but very real. And again, if the actor was shite, that could have been really, really shit to watch. But again, the actor, Kit Williamson, is just brilliant. Did you spot that he was Panta Lyman in the BBC's version of His Dark Materials as well?
I haven't seen that.
Oh, okay. Well, he's very good as Panta Lyman as well. Obviously, you don't see his face. He's kind of like a bird and various other animals. I think he's a red panda at one point. And that iconic kiss underneath the brolly. Oh, my heart, my heart, my heart, Mr. B. I can't cope with levels of lovely like that. It's the way they just have a cheeky little look around, check no one's watching, and then they just have this lovely. Oh, my ovaries ache. Oh, dear. And you talked about Imogen very briefly before. It's almost illusion, but it's not, because we live in a straight society where everyone assumes that everyone is straight until you hear otherwise. And your heart breaks for Imogen as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I liked Imogen. I don't know why, because again, she's a very minor character in a sense, but yeah, she did well with what she had.
Around the same time, there is the incident with Tao giving Nick a lot of shit. And again, I would not have handled it as well as that, and I'd have got myself into a lot of trouble with my boyfriend. And I think Nick's very strong as a character and almost like a example to young people watching this of you've got to be like standing up for yourselves, but there's also choices to be made during misunderstandings as well. Again, that scene really kind of resonated with me because, well, Nick handled it a lot better than I would now. And, well, we've already covered the saying yes to Imogen thing, haven't we? Oh, it just hurt my soul. But you've got to think, in that situation, any teenage boy under pressure, it was an impossible situation. And whilst I don't think Imogen meant to force him into it, it was just so grim, so sad, and impossible. And again, something that I think feeling sorry for someone and wanting to give them what they want, even if it's not what you want, is a very human thing. This program's about humanity as well as queerness. So some notes that I also wrote at this point. I was on Grindr whilst watching this, and I was like, you can't be on Grindr watching this. This is too wholesome. It's not okay. So I switched off my Grindr. Are you proud of me, Dev?
Yeah.
And something I noticed around this point as well, that the cuts are quite like a comic book as well. And obviously that's a reference to the source material, which I thought was a really nice little touch that you might not spot on a first watch. And then I also realised, because it's only like a 10-second title, they're a bit like Chucky, the Heartstopper things. You know, in as much as it's themed around what's going on in that episode, and, you know, there's a certain one where the Heartstopper is cracked because there's problems with their relationship, and it's a bit like that. Again, maybe I'm clutching at straws to make it linked to Chucky, but I definitely think that's a valid point.
Yeah, they are similar. Can't dispute that.
Yeah. And I also put every single kiss warms my old gay heart, because it does. Episode 5 is called Friend. And Nick decides whether he should skip his date with Imogen for Charlie's birthday. Tao vows to protect Charlie from Nick and his rude rugby friends. I'm just going to put this out there. Monopoly's a shit game. Why do people still play Monopoly? There's so many good board games out there, and Monopoly is not one of them.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, it's a. Yeah, I don't know any kid I don't know any kid that age playing Monopoly without their parents.
Nah. Also, I think I became a little bit flippant at the start of this episode. I wrote down, don't know what's worse, Tao's hat hair or no hat hair.
He is the most like a cartoon character. He's always the same.
Yeah, and again, the depiction of his style is very similar to the books, and his hair is quite weird in the books. I don't know how they could have done it without it looking utterly, utterly ridiculous, and it does look utterly, utterly ridiculous. More so than it does in the comics. But the character, I think, is a very realistic depiction of an outcast teen who's found his people. He is paranoid and protective and scared constantly. And again, having been an outcast teen, I can very much empathise with how he handles things badly, because he's so desperate to keep hold of the good thing he's had after some shit times, you know?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, he was. Yeah, that all definitely came across. Sort of similar to Elle. I was wondering the whole show when she was going to drop with Tao in terms of his identity and all that. When we first saw them in episode 1, I assumed because they were friends they were all gay. We don't get a dime on what Tao is the entire show. Is that a thing in the later books?
I mean, do you want the spoilers? Or maybe I shouldn't say, but there is a storyline, a heavy storyline with Elle and Tao later on in the books. And it does move away from Charlie a little bit because something happens to Charlie.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think the seeds have been sown with those characters for the next season. But also, I think, while we're talking about that, I also think you get a lot of teleprograms that have a shit ending that you really want resolved. I would have actually been happy if they hadn't made any more Heartstopper, because I think the way the final episode ends is actually kind of fucking perfect. And whilst I'm really, really happy there's more coming, I'm also happy with the resolution and the end at the end of the final episode. Did you feel like that the ending was well done?
Yeah, it was. It was definitely a big ending for Nick and Charlie. Even though I said I wouldn't do season 2, I am a little bit curious where some of these side characters are going. Like I say with Tao, like Tao is the best friend, he's the outcast. Like, is his storyline, is that it? Or is there more to him? I'm a little curious, are there more to these other characters?
Yeah, I think Tao is underutilized in this, but what he does have is quite meaningful.
I mean, yeah, he's well utilized for the storyline he's in. I guess, I'm not saying there should be more subplots with them in this season 1, then it might be a bit overstuffed. I guess that's a good thing that I am curious to see where these other characters go, aside from the 2 main characters.
So one of my major notes for episode 5 was that hug after the loo, where it's almost like you're so desperate and you hug someone so tight and you can't let them go because you're so full of emotion. Holy shit, I hug like that. And so many hard relates across the 8 episodes of this. And what I find fascinating is that it's always with a different character. There's aspects of all these characters, including the bad, in inverted commas, baddies, that just everything makes me go, fuck, I've done that. Fuck, I'm like that. Fuck, that's something I would have done. And that hug just kind of like, I didn't cry, but I was like, fuck, that's a hard relate. Again, we talked about it before, the realisticness, I'm not sure that's a word, but how the realistic depiction of how rubbish people are in romantic relationships. I love the line, why are we like this? I really love that. We're all like that. And it's just great. It's just fucking great. The only other thing I've got on episode 5 is that Nick and Imogen actually handled it incredibly maturely and really, really well. She's a friend to him when he talks to her about things. And again, it would be nice if that felt a bit more realistic, because it doesn't. If there is something that I think is unrealistic, is how decent Imogen is, because nobody takes rejection that well.
Yeah, that's kind of in a sense when I did like that scene, but that's kind of why I'm curious about these side characters. I want to see a bit more of Imogen, because I was like, it almost makes me ask, like, why is she so nice? Like, wow, these two must have a good friendship, and we don't see much of it. I guess it's sort of like what you consider unnecessary drama. If she had reacted badly. It's kind of going back to my point about Elle, how Tara and her girlfriend, when they come out in their subplot, they get a lot of homophobic remarks from classmates and stuff. And I guess that's what I was wondering. Does anybody actually know that Elle is trans? Or do they think she's just a cis girl? Because, like, surely if people knew, and these two schools are pretty closely knit, like, they would know that someone transitioned and moved over.
Yeah.
Like, no one is bringing it up. But then it's kind of like the unnecessary drama. Like, do I want more bullying in this show? Do I want trans bullying? No, not really.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think it would affect the quite gentle, wistful vibe to have too much cruelty.
And it works. It's not unbelievable by any stretch. It works. Nick and Imogen are friends, and it's believable enough that they would settle this amicably.
Episode 6 is called Girls. Tara makes a relationship official on social media, but she isn't ready for the side effects. The friends try to play matchmaker with Elle and Tao. And at the very start, there is a list of incredibly good films. Did you see the list of all the queer films that he was looking up?
Oh, yeah.
They're all classics. And again, it's obviously done by someone who's proudly queer and understands gay culture and how hard it can be to be queer. And I think that's something that is across the board through the whole series. But just the pick of the films is almost like a cherry on the cake saying, yep, this is us. This is what we've had as our influences growing up being put there in front of these young people. And I love that. I love that it's just the slightest, tiniest of touch, but I just kind of like doffed my hat to that. I've seen all of the fucking films. Every single one on that list I'd seen.
I think I'd seen a good number of them. And it did confront me as well, because right at the top and early on when I was watching it, kind of made the point to myself, like, what are the stakes in this? What does it matter if these two get together or not? I really love the film, But I'm a Cheerleader, which I think was on the list. Yeah,
it was.
I really love that film. And that's the same thing. It's like, what if those two don't get together? But, I like that film. So I guess, I'm not immune to that.
And so the social media thing is really well done. It's so real. And it's always something that's completely flummoxed me is, why do people bother to hate? And it doesn't give you an answer for that. It just shows you the damage that it does. But that's because you can't understand why people hate, because unless you hate yourself, and I don't. I genuinely don't. The only prejudice I have is for people who are prejudiced. And I think, again, it's really real that cyberbullying and social media is quite a tough thing to do.
Yeah. I was going to say about Tara, and the plotline here. Yeah, I guess know the other side of that then, about like the, why do people hate and stuff. I never hated as a kid, but like it was true back then. Everyone said gay. Like everything was gay. Like if you didn't like your homework was gay. And I definitely threw around gay at people, but like it wasn't in this sense where someone came out and I was saying like, oh, you are gay. It was never like that. But at the same time, I think, I can't think of any people I knew back in high school, because I don't really use Facebook. I don't follow people now. So I don't know if anyone since has come out as gay. But like, I guess that's the thing with kids those at that age. You don't know if someone is going through this story. They could be presenting as straight, and you could say they're gay and not even know. So you don't even know you've insulted them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But I think that kind of culture of it being okay to use gay as an insult or to describe something bad is dying away. It seems to me, with my experience as a scout leader, that they don't do that. Or maybe it's just because they know I'm gay, the young people. So they're at least aware, if they're hiding it from me, they're at least aware that it's kind of not okay.
Yeah, I'd like to believe that. Yeah, maybe that is the context. The bullies will always be bullies, but I assume most kids are nice enough to know that if, like you just said, if those kids know that you are gay, they're not going to throw around gay because they know that's that can be an insult.
And it's not heavily covered in this, but issues of peer pressure, like, for example, when Nick says yes to the date with Imogen, there is some of that in this, but I don't think it's heavily done. I think there's only really that moment with the asking him out thing that is heavy on that. And I think there's some very mature conversations that I'm not sure I would have been capable of at 14 or 15 in this show.
Yeah, we do get a lot of Darcy Tyree. We get a lot of story of them. And that's interesting about pressure. Like, definitely not intentional pressure, but it's kind of the same thing with Nick. Like, you want to be out and you want to be happy with someone, But, this is a good example of, like, Tara doesn't regret coming out, but, there are shitty people.
Yeah, and another massive hard relate, the situation that Nick's in where he's seeing someone else who's queer come out have real unpleasant issues. That happened exactly to me. A kid came out at my school and he was horrifically bullied. And that just shoved me further and further and further back into the closet because I didn't want the experience that he'd had. And it's funny, isn't it? And I don't know, the character of Nick is stronger than I was at the time. And maybe that's why I like it, because it almost shows me what could have been for me if I'd have been a bit braver.
Yeah, which works with the tone we've been talking about, the wistful, good tone. Yeah, in real life, maybe the more realistic reality would be that Nick just keeps quiet and they just keep their relationship quiet. But this is a nice story, so obviously Nick has his bravery. He stands up for himself. He stands up for we'll get to it next episode, but yeah, he stands up for people.
And I think Tara's reaction to the homophobia is really real and quite almost tough to watch, or as tough as it gets in this. The obviously saying yes to the date was just heartbreaking, but this is heartbreaking in a very different way. And it's something that you can't really understand unless you're queer and you've gone through shit like that. And I think it's important to show stuff like this on screen, that you're not weak, you're not a loser, you're not overreacting for a response like that, because it's natural and it's what most queer people have gone through and reacted in that way. And then at the end of episode 6, just the smiles when it was drumming and they were smiling at each other in the I didn't cry, but I was very close. I might put down a half. For that, for crying. Episode 7 is called Bully. After both Nick and Tao get into fights with Harry, Charlie worries that he's making Nick's life too difficult and straining his friendship with Tao. And we talked about Tori briefly before, but I think the relationship with Tori is great. The brother-sister winding each other up aspect is done really well. And knowing Tori a bit better because I've read the book, I think what little screen time she has, she does really well, despite the fact she looks 100.
I didn't say she looked old.
You know what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And I think what this episode covers really, really well is how previous bad experiences can scar you so badly that they, like a word you used before, they kind of blinker you to potentially the point where it can be dangerous. And yeah, that hit really hard. What's fascinating is we've said this word a lot, wistful, but all the bad stuff, even though it's gently done, just keeps on chipping away at my queerness in a, remember this, remember that, you still do this, remember this, you still do that. It just spoke to me in a way that so little else has ever. And my baggage, there's enough to fill a fucking aeroplane. So the bad experiences scarring thing really, really resonated with me. Am I making myself really, really dateable on this podcast? Fuck. I'm lovely and I don't have lots of baggage, really. I'm nice, date me. Love me, anybody. Hold my hand. Hug me when I cry, etc. Shit. Moving on. Right, so I want to talk about pet names, Dev. I like that the pet name Char happens organically. And have you ever had a pet name, Dev?
Dev doesn't count, but I don't know. I don't think I've ever had a one-to-one nickname like that.
Now, do I share mine? I'll share one of them. My first boyfriend, obviously the first man that I slept in the same bed with, neither of us were particularly good at mornings, but I was worse. And if I needed a wee, I would kind of like get out of bed and really kind of stagger. My legs wouldn't work properly on my way to the toilet. And I'd kind of stagger to the bogs. And then I'd come back and get back in bed. And Rob said to me, "You're a bit like Bambi in the morning, aren't you?" So he called me Bambi for years. Fucking Bambi. Fuck's sake. And moving on to the unpleasant characters of Ben and Harry. I think Harry is the epitome of your insecurities make you a bully. And I do feel like Ben is worse because he actually weaponizes and blackmails, whereas Harry just behaves like a dick.
Yeah, they're very different antagonists in that sense.
And I think it's easy to kind of latch onto Harry as the worst of the two because he's bigger and he's nastier and he is the one that gets into the fights. But I do think that the manipulation and the cruelty of Ben is something that Harry just doesn't have.
Yeah, it's very strange. Like, Harry is a very surface level bully. Like, you're always going to meet people like that. You don't even need to know them that well. But, it's very personal, the one of Ben. It always was weird when he confronted him in the car park at the end. It was like a little bit mature, like, I don't know, Skins or something. I was like, what the hell is Ben going to do? Like, what's he thinking? Like, again, kind of like how we talked about with Tao, it's like, from an adult perspective, it's like, well, clearly Charlie has moved on. Like, what's your hang up? Like, but then, yeah, I don't know, from Ben's perspective, Charlie must be thinking about him. He must be hung up on him. And you get that perspective near the end. Like, the last episode.
What I like is, again, another fucking hard relate for me was even they just stood there thing. I've been that guy. I've definitely been that guy. I'm not that guy anymore, but the guy that sees someone else getting some shit and head down, grateful that it's not you, when you should do more than that. I think a lot of people have been that guy and you've kind of thought about it and you're quite ashamed of it. I won't be that guy anymore, but that one stung a lot as well. There's a lot in this that just reminded me of my own bad behavior that I have learned from and become a better person from. And it doesn't shy away from stuff like highlighting it's not enough to just put your head down and not get involved. You should stop shit like this.
Yeah. It was very brave what Nick did. And it was after the fact as well. So, like, he didn't necessarily have to go back and do that, but he did.
Yeah.
It was for Charlie, but Charlie wasn't there. Harry did it for himself.
And what I like is the contrast between the two fights. The Harry and Nick fight, it's fists, it's quite brutal, and it's two blokes who they're quite physical, tough guys, and that's shown really well. And then when Tao gets into a fight, he's just kind of pulling and trying to protect himself, and he doesn't know how to throw punches, and it's a bit more just shit as a fight. And I liked that they were two very different depictions and quite realistic depictions of how fights can go, depending on who you are.
Yeah, I did appreciate the difference in the two. I did feel like, given that they both got bruised and bad, not bad, they both got bruised after the Harry and Nick fight, that Tao got pretty lucky. Came out of that with no scratches, didn't he?
Yeah. But again, I think you kind of can see how the two fights were very different. The brutality of the punches to the face wasn't there with the fight with Tao. It was kind of like just kind of pulling each other's clothes and trying to get away, and maybe. But I think you're right. Maybe Tao could have done with a bit of a split lip or something. That's probably a problem.
Yeah, well, it depends on, like we keep saying, it's a wistful show. It's an upbeat show. But then that's what we were just saying. It's the right thing to stand up to bullies and stuff.
Mm.
Like, there's a two-way street, isn't it? It's like, yeah, Tao should. He had his own reasons for fighting. It wasn't really as noble, was it? But
No.
yeah, the reality is, if you're like a 14-year-old and you stand up to 14-year-olds, if you stand up against other 14-year-olds, and they are like in the rugby team, they probably are going to beat the shit out of you as well.
Yeah.
And that is kind of the reality of it. It's like, well, you can stand up against them, but then you also have to take a licking too.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Episode 8 is called Boyfriend. As the boys and girls schools meet for a sports day, Charlie's on the brink of breaking it all off with Nick, and Elle and Tao share a special moment. And I think the thing about how you ruin people's lives is another painful, hard relate for me. I've struggled with anxiety over the years, and you do sometimes think these people that I care about would do better off without me. And Charlie's kind of attitude, whilst I can see him being wrong, I can't do the same for myself. And again, I think it's so sensitively done. It's really beautifully done, because it is hard when your own brain is telling you that you're a burden. And I think it's really, really well done. And again, strangely doesn't pull its punches, despite the fact that this feels like a gentle show.
Yeah, it's there's a lot going on. There's a lot of emotion going on in this finale.
Yeah, and suddenly Stephen Fry, brilliant. I love that we suddenly get Stephen Fry, and what a queer icon to get to be in this show. It's just a nice little touch that, another doff my hat, well done. You could have got any rando to do a voiceover, but you got Stephen fucking Fry. Right, you think he's an icon too, right?
Well, I kind of forgot he was gay.
Wow.
I don't know. I just think he's a little pompous. I'm not a fan of him. But it's nothing to do with him being gay. I just think he's too British.
Well, but this is British.
Yeah, but I mean, Stephen Fry the man is too British.
Well, true. But is that such a bad thing, being very British? I'm quite British.
Yeah. I don't know. He reminds me of like old Empire Britain. I don't know. I assume he's not a Tory, but he gives me Tory vibes. I don't know. I don't gel with him.
I don't understand how you can be a queer Tory, and I'm pretty sure he's not a Tory because he's a patron of Humanists UK. But yeah, I can see why you say that about Stephen Fry, even though you are massively wrong.
He's like, what's his name? He reminds me of Neil deGrasse Tyson, in that there's nothing especially wrong with him, but he just rubs you the wrong way.
Fair, and I think he does that deliberately. And I mean, we've covered this before, but the refreshing thing when you're waiting for a message off someone, hard relate. And I love it when Charlie lays down the smack on Ben. It's been building up for 8 episodes, and he lays down the smack, and in a really odd way, I actually think in the long run it helps Ben too.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, because it's an odd one with Ben, because I definitely understand what they're doing with it, but yeah, he really does disappear for times. Because I guess the show is from Charlie's perspective, so we as an audience as well just forget Ben as a thing until he shows up, like in the bully episode.
Yeah.
And so it's a logical smackdown on Ben at the end. It is what he needs to hear, but it's also like, I don't know, for me it hadn't really been building up. It was just Ben just happened to be there as well, and it just happened. But yeah, I guess it was needed.
So, with all the stuff about whether or not this is realistic, there is one thing that I do have to question: gays being good at sports.
Well, they say the PE teacher says that earlier, doesn't it? And it's like, it's not complicated. It's just Google gay athletes. There are a lot.
Yeah, I know. I'm taking the piss. But it's probably worth having a conversation about the teachers. They are much more prominent in the books and even get their own little spin-off comics. Mr. Majaji, for example, falls in love with a teacher from the other school, whereas he is just borderline plot device. even though he's lovely and the few minor scenes he gets are great, I don't know. I want to see more Mr. Ajaji in the next season. I think that's a character that's ripe to be kind of flowered in the next series.
Yeah, it is. Again, it's not a criticism. It's not. I don't know what it is, but it's like, he was a decent side character. But then you got like moments like the PE teacher kept showing up, and like even episode 1, very early on when he comes into the class, and you get that teacher. It's like it seems almost like he's going to be a character, but then no, you see him like twice in the background, and that's it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's my thing with Ben. It's like this is school, and you are seeing the same people every single day. But because it's a TV show, unimportant characters just don't appear until they're needed. Whereas I think like the idea of Ben in reality, even if you're not like sitting next to each other, you would be walking around at lunch and seeing that person that you're trying to avoid every single day.
True. By the end of this, at least on the first watch before I'd read the books, I was desperate for Elle and Tao to get together. How did you feel about their relationship?
Well, that's what I was sort of that I had to wrap my head around a couple of things near the end was, like, I'm not against it. It seems like it would be a sweet couple. But, like, that's what I mean. Like, only until near the end of the show when it was very clear that was going to be a plot line in the future, I was like, oh, so is Tao just straight then? I kind of assumed he, like the others, he was also gay. But I guess he's available. Or at least Elle would know he's available.
I mean, he's clearly some kind of queer identity in as much as he's being with a trans woman. There are a lot of straight people that wouldn't be comfortable with that. So he's got some kind of queerness. I don't know what I'd call it, because he's still technically straight, isn't he? But
that's right. This is a dig that isn't even a dig because it hasn't happened yet, but it feels like the way that Elle is trans. It'll be like, just so they can tick all the boxes, Tao is going to be ace or something in season 2.
Well, you'll have to watch season 2 to find out.
Like, he has to be something. He can't just be straight.
That's, yeah, the token straight guy. I guess we're coming to the very end of it, and I love what Nick does, and I love Imogen's reaction. Just that few seconds of screen time that Imogen gets where she's happy for him and finally truly understands what's going on. That was so beautifully done. Big love to the actor for that. And I want to go on that date. Holy shit. I want to go on that date. I want the romance. I want the ice cream. I want the hand holding. And I want someone to run into the sea and say they love me. Why doesn't anyone love me, Jeff? I just want to be happy with a boy. You don't care, do you? You don't care that you're single.
I'm not a big fan of the beach.
For fuck's sake.
I couldn't help but be distracted when he did that. It's like, oh, it's a big romantic gesture, but good Lord, he's going to have wet shoes for the rest of the day.
Oh, for fuck's sake. I'm supposed to be the curmudgeon, and you've been nothing but grumpy about this whole thing, whereas I've been like, I cried, it was beautiful, I love this, I wish I had this as a child. And you've changed, Dev. You've changed.
Look, that's the reality of relationships and stuff. If someone wanted me to make that gesture, I'm like, fuck off, let me just take my shoes off first.
I don't want reality. I want wistful, happy, everything's queer and lovely shit. That's what I want. Why can't anyone give that to me? I'm available. At Mark Adams HC, DM me. Because I'm clearly such a catch after this fucking episode. I might cut the whole fucking episode down to about 20 minutes so I don't look like a fucking massive, lonely loser. I'm not going to do that.
Talking to realism, though, just to take it back a bit in the episode, I did think, after the end of episode 7, I was like, oh, what's that going to mean for the whole rugby thing? But, like, Nick was just playing rugby fine? Was he playing with Harry? That's a little unaddressed.
True.
Unless I missed a scene.
No, I don't think you did.
Because it's odd because in the first episode, when Charlie has that quote unquote breakup, depending on what they thought they were boyfriends or not, because Ben doesn't, but they had their breakup, and then Nick was like, "I'm never talking to him again." You don't get that beat with Harry. I assume he's not going to talk to Harry anymore, but he was still on the rugby team. I just thought that was going to be an obstacle, like how at one point, I think it might be episode 8 or episode 7, where Charlie says that he can't be on the rugby team anymore.
No, I think that's a fair criticism, and I think maybe it was just time constraints, maybe, but you're absolutely right. It isn't addressed. You're right. And then at the very end, Nick's mum is wonderful, and I think Olivia Colman is a fantastic actor, and again, like Stephen Fry, a massive coup to have her in the series. And that scene is just so lovely. And for every young queer person out there, I really hope that they can have a similar experience in coming out to their parents. I handled it incredibly badly. My parents were fine with shit. I wasn't. I was a massive bellend. And maybe that's a story for another day. But I just think it's really nice to see a depiction of a good coming out, because the amount of horror stories you hear when you're chatting to your gay friends, I think it's lovely that they handled it in that way, because that does happen. You do get nice parents. You do get parents who go shrug hug, and shrug hug is exactly the way to handle a queer kid coming out to you.
Yeah, it was nice. It was very nice in its simplicity, how well it went. But it was all acted really well. And I was thinking that at the start when Olivia Colman was like in episode 2 or 3 or something, I was like, why is she in this? In what is borderline a cameo? Like just playing someone's mum. But then, she gets a really, really good scene right at the end.
And I think she was offered the part as like a cameo, and she read it and she loved it. She didn't have to take it. I think she wanted it more than anything, because it is such a lovely part. At least that's what I've read somewhere.
I would imagine, since it's all written, the author, Alice Oseman, she wrote every episode. So I assume, however many scenes she actually did have, like 3, they gave her all 3. And they were like, oh, this is going to be your acting scene at the end. And it's going to be worth it. And I would imagine Olivia Colman said, yeah, for that.
Oh, and just so you know, I had a little cry when they kissed at the beach. So that is my tally up to 4.5 cries, which makes it 1 every 2 episodes. How many times did you cry, Dev?
Let me just check my notes. So 8 divided by 0. So I think the end result was 0.
You are just the worst. So I have sat here for an hour and 20 minutes and gushed about Heartstopper Season 1. You messaged me saying, I don't want to do Season 2. Have I convinced you to do Season 2 with me, or do I need to get a guest host?
Yeah. Well, okay, here's the thing, and you may hate me for this. I watched most of the show at 1.4 speed.
What?
So my enthusiasm for Season 2 isn't sky high, but I'll read the Wikipedia when it comes out.
Fuck off. Right, I'm finding a guest host. I need to find someone who's actually got a soul, has got joy in their life and likes nice things. Doesn't just like bloody horror and guts and gore and hate and homophobia and all other bad things. You just love bad things.
I think I'm a little above denying that I love homophobia. Don't need to argue that point.
I think what would be really nice is if we got a lot of feedback on this from people who've watched Heartstopper. So if you have watched Heartstopper, do let us know what you thought, because we did have 2 almost extremes, which is quite rare with you and me. We both tend to like the same shit. So I'd be really interested to hear what our CHUCKYVISION listeners thought about Heartstopper. Are you happy with the adaptation? Did you enjoy it? And are you looking forward to series 2?
Yeah, I imagine some of our audience will definitely enjoy this show. To compare it with Chucky, our main focus on this podcast, to compare it with Chucky, the relationship between Nick and Charlie, it's not all that different from Jake and Devon. It's just imagine Chucky without Chucky, and then you've got Heartstopper.
Well, that's kind of why I thought it was relevant and something that we'd cover. But I'll be brutally honest, I would have killed to talk about this with someone. So I think the link is tenuous, but there really is that parallel between the two young teenage gay romances that can't be ignored. And if you enjoyed that aspect of Chucky, I think Heartstopper's just beautiful. It doesn't have killer dolls or anything, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah, if you really connected to that story in Chucky, then you will like Heartstopper.
So, Dev, where can people find you on the internet?
I'll keep it brief. People can find me over on Twitter at Absolute Travesty, though I'm using it less and less these days. The updates, man. I deleted it off my phone because, honestly, I don't know why I spend my time scrolling on that site anymore. It's getting so bad.
If you're looking for me, it's at MarkAdamsHC on Twitter and Instagram. I don't really use Instagram for anything other than my job, my business, but you can follow me on there if you really want to. And I've got another podcast. It's about Red Dwarf, so if you like that, at Red Dwarf Pod on Twitter. So, that's it for this month's episode, and thank you for joining us, and until next time, wanna play? Chucky Vision is a podcast brought to you by the We Made This Network. Follow us on Twitter at Chucky Vision. Follow the network on Twitter at WMT_network. Our website is wemadethisnetwork.com. The logo was designed by Dev, and the theme tune composed by Dark Fantasy Studios. Wanna play?
Do you know your Daleks from your Drashings?
Or your Zygons from your Zagreus?
Do you know what the TARDIS stands for?
And do you know which Doctor Who stories featured Kevin Grimlock, the cyborg T-Rex that became the Doctor's companion?
Then this is a Doctor Who podcast for you. I'm Baz Greenland, and each fortnight I chat to my son Ben.
Hello.
And the occasional guest as we cover 60 years of Doctor Who on TV, Big Finish, and more.
And I did really enjoy that one. Except that wasn't really actual pirates, it was Badger pirates in space, but it was still piratey.
Badger pirates in space?
Yes. But I am willing to make an exception for pirates this episode.
Donald Sumpter is amazing.
He's good.
I love the fact that he just pops up. He just pops up. Probably Rassilon. Probably.
Well, they do confirm later on he is.
I think they do go
He
there.
says I'm Rassilon the Redeemer.
Of course he does. Bloody hell.
And he
I
has
watched it.
the gauntlet as well, which gives the hint at that.
Yeah.
I'm nodding profusely.
Yeah. We're going proper classic Doctor Who as well, a lot of it as well.
Yes.
In a week has done more for the show than for the last 5 years.
I do like how Ross D. Davies is kind of the PR spokesman for the Centurion special. That's quite fun.
Yeah. And he's also saying, oh, well, Jodie and Chibnall still have an episode left. I'm not going to tread on their feet, but he is 14, just so you know, for the filming purposes. And a week later, oh yeah, by the way, these guys are back. Just thought you'd want to know. Find us on the We Made This Network.
And all good podcast providers.
What about the bad ones?
Yes, them too.
Ah, good.
Because somewhere there's danger.
Somewhere there's injustice.
Somewhere else, the tea's getting cold.
You know, we probably should throw that tea away now. It has been sat there since 1989.